Welcome to Voices of WIA, the live show by Women in Apologetics, which of course seeks to equip you to defend your faith with confidence. My name is Phoenix Hayes, and I'm honored to be your host tonight. Our guests today are Lindsey Medenwaldt and Lemon Price. And on our episode today, we'll be discussing the most popular world religions, providing an analysis of what each one believes, as well as how we can address the differences when compared with Christianity. I think it's going to be a really great conversation. But before we get started, I want to invite you to participate in something really worthwhile and good by partnering with us through our end of year fundraiser. As hopefully most of you know, WIA is a 501c3 nonprofit. So all of your donations are used to sustain this ministry and produce great resources and content, whether that's through our social media channels, our website, our newsletters, our events, or even our educational opportunities. At this time, we've reached 33% of our goal to raise $35,000 by December 31st. If you've been blessed in any way by the content and resources we produce at Women in Apologetics, we encourage you to partner with us in our mission to educate, equip, and encourage women in Christian apologetics by giving a gift of any amount. We'd also be grateful if you'd partner with us through your prayers that God would provide what we need to continue to sustain and grow women in apologetics. Thank you so much for your partnership and prayers. And now, without further ado, let me introduce our guest today. Hi, Lindsey. So Lindsey Medenwaldt is the executive director of Mama Bear Apologetics and serves as a consulting editor and author for the Christian Research Journal. She has a master's in apologetics and ethics from Denver Seminary, a JD from St. Mary's School of Law, and a master's in public administration from Midwestern State University. She is also a full-time children's pastor. Our other guest, Lemon, thank you for coming on, is a member of our WIA team. She lives in South Georgia with her husband, 2 boys, and 3 lap dogs. Her passion for serving others has existed since elementary school. She's currently pursuing her Master's of Divinity in Apologetics at Liberty University. Her passion for apologetics came when she left the Mormon religion. Growing up as a non-Christian, she didn't know what she didn't know when missionaries knocked on her door and when she learned the truth about the gospel. Lemon went on a deep faith journey. Now she focuses on helping women really know and understand God's truth so they always feel equipped to take on the world. So welcome, Lemon and Lindsey. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
We have such a great topic today that follows our theme this month at WIA, Worldviews Analysis. Would either of you say this is a topic that you get asked about often?
Every day.
Every day. Yeah, every day.
Every day.
And it's literally the thing that I talk about most. This is like the worldview for parents and for non-parents, and it just runs the gamut as far as who wants to talk about worldview. Age doesn't matter. Gender doesn't matter. Like, they all want to talk about it because it's such a cultural thing that's happening right now, not just in the Western world, but like in the East as well. It's not just Christians who are dealing with religious pluralism and what that does for Christian beliefs. It's non-Christians who are dealing with, wait, why are we meshing beliefs together? And so worldview is a really important topic, and I'm so glad that WIA is taking an entire month to talk about it.
Definitely. In fact, I recently heard an amazing presentation by Brett Kunkel, and he was making the argument that really, if we want to reach our youngest generation, especially Gen Z, it needs to be a worldview-based apologetic, because
Amen.
they're not asking, does God exist? And when did the world begin? They're asking, why should I even care what the biblical worldview is when I've got one that works for me, right? So let's get started, because I have a feeling that we're going to go over with all of these questions on our time. So I'm thinking let's Let's get into it. So
Amen.
first, Lemon, I want, you used to be a Mormon.
Yeah.
Could you tell us a little bit about your testimony and conversion to becoming a Christian? I mean, that's amazing.
It was intense. So, like you said, Phoenix, I was raised non-Christian. So my family is, my immediate family was very anti-Christian, actually, and put Christians down. I just knew that wasn't the life that I wanted, and I had, like a secret Bible and things. Didn't really understand what I was reading though, and so when two Mormon missionaries came to my door and invited me to my neighbor's Bible study, I had no idea what I didn't know. And so I went and I was baptized 3 weeks after meeting them, and I felt like this is the place for me. And then I very quickly sort of realized, after a series of bad experiences with the church, just started looking at some of the problems with the gospel, and the missionaries telling me they didn't actually know the Bible, which I thought was really interesting, since they say that they work together, but it wasn't emphasized at all. I never heard anybody talking about the Bible at church. And so when I started seeing a lot of problems in the theology, and having some really good conversations with my husband, we were like, we're out, we're leaving. And so, yeah, we submitted the papers to remove our names from the records and did the whole kit and caboodle. It's pretty intense because a lot of our friends are still Mormon. And so it's weird when you leave, it's like leaving like a whole community, but I could not be happier that we left.
Wow, that is something that the Christian community really has to always keep in mind, don't they? When we're trying to deliver, our worldview, and which of course is the truth, and we're sharing it with, our brothers and sisters in the Mormon faith. We're not just asking them to believe, are we? We're asking them to have a total shift, and that's going to likely cause great, a great break in their families and things like that. So when you got married to your husband, I assume he was a Mormon also?
So we actually met at a different church. Something in my spirit just said, like, don't go back, for some reason. And so we actually met at a different church, and he started looking into it because I'm like, oh, I don't know. They have really good family values, and this all sounds really good. And so he started looking into it, but he's like, do you not see the problems with the theology here? And I was like, oh yeah, I am now. And it just unraveled, just from one question, really from him about one scripture that he found.
Wow. That's your classic example of someone kind of pulling on the thread of the sweater and it falling apart. But
Yeah.
thank goodness that you guys were able to go on that journey together and it didn't cause, a break there.
Yeah, we're super thankful for that, that we got out kind of before our kids were indoctrinated and all of those kind of things. So thankfully we left sooner rather than later.
And I'm curious, how does your family respond now when you try or do you not even bother? What are they like in terms of listening to what you might have to say about your religion now?
So because they are so anti-Christian, we don't have a relationship really. It's probably been about 3 years since I've had like a good relationship with them, just because they're so anti-Christianity, for whatever personal reason they have, that they want kind of nothing to do with my husband and my kids because they think we're all brainwashed lunatics. So that's fine.
Okay, and I'm guessing within the Mormon religion, they don't feel a need to save you from your brainwashing? Like, do they not have the same, impulse to convert you back,
Um,
perhaps?
so my Mormon friends do. So they definitely feel it. But none of my family is that way, which is nice, I guess. But a lot of my Mormon friends are like, don't you want to come back to church? You can't really be happy without the church and all of these things. And, there's a lot of like guilt associated with it when you talk to them, right? And trying
Sure.
to tell you that your happiness is manufactured when you're not a
Oh,
Mormon.
I
Yeah.
see. Okay.
Yeah. It's
Okay.
manufactured.
Well, just stop faking it, Lemon, and we can all get real about it. Yeah.
I know, it's so awful. I'll be sadder, I guess, for them to make them feel better.
Right. Well, and Lindsey, so you have a different story in that you weren't raised in a Mormon home, and that pushed you out and got you interested in other world religions. What did spark this fascination that you hold with? I mean, we're all interested, don't get me wrong, but like you've taken it to another level with your commitment. So what prompted that?
Yeah, I'm definitely an odd one, I think, amongst most apologists. Not a lot of us specialize in world religion. It's not something like, if we specialize in worldview, it's typically one worldview or two worldviews. It's not all the worldviews.
Right. Way to be ambitious.
So I think it's been a journey for me, if I'm being honest. I was raised in a Christian home. My parents are Christian. My dad's a pastor. My parents were missionaries. So MKPK, it, Bible was read in my home, and I knew scripture, went to church, did all the things. And I would say that my belief was pretty strong in the Christian faith. But in college, I had a non-Christian professor challenge me in my beliefs. It wasn't what you would see in like God's Not Dead. Like it wasn't a debate situation where I had to declare that I wasn't a Christian or that God's dead. It was a little bit more gentle than that. And his question was essentially, have you ever considered other worldview claims? And the answer, to be frank, had been, no, at that point. I had dabbled in like secret societies. I'd always wanted to be like secretly invited to a secret society. I thought that would be really cool. But as far as worldview, that was never something that I'd considered. And so for that semester in college, I dove in, and I read the Book of Mormon. I read some other religious texts, the Quran, and I attended some other services from other worldviews, and really examined the truth claims of those religions as well as the truth claims of Christianity. I didn't know the word apologetics at the time, so I didn't know that that's kind of what I was doing. Apologetics didn't really enter the picture for me until about 16 years ago, when my husband became a Christian, and he became a Christian because of apologetics. And so that was the first time I'd really ever heard the word apologetics. And I didn't even know that I wanted to do apologetics or study world religion until we both ended up at seminary together. And that's kind of what I started really pursuing, and did a whole project on it in seminary, and started writing a series for Mama Bear on world religion. And I would say that I know a little about a lot of religions, and I know a lot about a couple religions. But when people ask me about specific worldviews, like, it's nothing for me to go to the library and check out some books and do months and months of research to learn about that worldview so that I can then have a full-blown conversation. So I really get jazzed anytime somebody challenges me with a different worldview that I hadn't considered before. It's one of the reasons I love writing for the Christian Research Journal, is that they're always challenging me to investigate the truth claims of some new thing that I'd never heard of before. And I get to dive in for 4 to 6 months on that one topic. And I become like this crazy person that wants to talk about that topic all the time. God bless my friends.
Oh, what a perfect job. I mean, wouldn't we all love to dive deep into these specific topics, but when it's actually, part of your employment, it's like amazing. Perfect.
Love it. It's like God had a plan or
You're
something.
the perfect little weirdo, Lindsey. Well, so speaking of, the fact that while you were a believer in college, you felt driven to dive deep and read the entire Book of Mormon and things like that. It's funny, we do receive comments from followers saying, that they've been concerned that learning about other worldviews is perhaps not beneficial and actually might be detrimental to their faith and walk with Christ.
Yeah.
So how do we respond to, I guess, a fear like that? If you could go first, Lindsey.
Yeah, that's not an abnormal fear. And I can sort of understand where they're coming from, especially if there isn't a firm foundation in their own beliefs. It's one of the reasons why apologetics is so important in bolstering our own faith, so that when we begin to study other worldviews, we've already done the work in determining whether or not Christianity is true. And so, one of the things I like to tell people and kids as a kids pastor, you don't have to be afraid to investigate the truth claims of Christianity. There's nothing to be afraid of. And there's nothing to be afraid of really in reading other texts. My caution is that if there's already a propensity of disbelief or doubt, to approach it carefully, as we always should, and have discernment. So I did a whole series on witchcraft last year.
Ooh, spicy.
And yeah, and I write a lot about the New Age, not just for the Christian Research Journal, but for Mama Bear, and that requires me to read like a lot of stuff. And I always tell the people who read my things or watch our podcasts is, you don't have to read those things. I'm not asking you to go read those things, but I want you to be aware that they exist and what they're claiming is true, because ultimately, we're trying to make disciples of men and women, and we're trying to convince people that Christianity is true, which it is. And so if we're going to have those conversations with folks who are already embedded in false truth, false truth, I know they're not believing truth. We need to know the basic beliefs of said worldview. My caution there, as Lemon can probably attest to, is that not everybody who subscribes to that particular worldview will believe all the things, all the generalities that are written about that worldview in textbooks, for example. There are little tweaks here and there that people like to make in their faith, and Christians do this as well.
No, we don't.
Yeah. Christians are an interesting bunch sometimes. We're real nervous about studying other religions, but we don't study our own. And it's flabbergasting sometimes to hear, that Christians don't even know what we believe. I think it's like 51% don't know what the Great Commission is. And it's like, okay, so how are we going to go make disciples if we don't even know that that's a mandate in Scripture? And it's so once we've learned and had a foundation in our own faith, I feel like we can confidently move forward to see what the general faith is of other worldviews without fear that we'll fall prey to those truth claims that are actually false.
I love that. So it's like, yes, go out there, get a better understanding of the other worldviews. I mean, why would anyone take you seriously if you have no idea what they are and haven't even considered them? But the priority is first to get that foundation in your own faith so you can articulate things. Right. Lemon, sorry, did you want to add that?
Yeah, no, I'm with Lindsey, because I talk to so many women who've been like Christians for, longer than I've been alive. And they're like, I've never heard of apologetics. I've never studied world religions. And then I'll bring up a scripture and they're like, I didn't even know that was in Scripture, and that's a command from God. And so I tell people all the time, you have to know what you believe and then what other people believe, because you can't go out and share the gospel if you don't have you have to meet people where they're at. And so, right, Jesus meets us where we're at. And so you've got to meet other people where they're at and try to figure out how to best share the gospel with them in a way that makes sense, right? You were talking about Gen Z, right? Like, why should I care? And so you have to do the same when you're talking to other people. And obviously nobody expects you to be an expert in all world religions and world views and every minute issue that could come up. But
I will say that I get lots of questions about lots of things, and I have to be like, I don't know. I've never studied that one. There's only like 4,200 different religions in the world. So.
Right.
So you're not an expert in all of them. It's so weird. No. I totally thought you were.
Let's make that clear. I am not an expert in all of them.
You are a fraud. Okay.
I think that's important too, to say I don't know, but I'm willing to research and get back to you, right? We have to be okay with not knowing the answer, and being willing to put ourselves out there to find the answer for these people. Because I think that's a big thing, is why a lot of people don't go out and study, I think, because they don't want to be caught with like, you know, non-answers, right? Like,
Totally. Yeah.
I've heard from like non-Christians. I feel like there's a statistic somewhere, and maybe Lindsay will know it, but like where non-Christians know the Bible better than Christians do, because they're like their own apologist for like atheism or whatever their worldview is, and so
Yeah.
we
Or
just
they
have to
think
guide
they
them.
know the Bible better than
Yeah.
you do.
Yes, that's the thing. They think they know it, right? The amount of Levitical law that is quoted is
Mhm.
amazing.
It's
When,
brilliant. It's impressive.
it's
Yes.
really great.
Okay, so guys, before we take a break, we're going to crush this last question, and it's just a real easy one. It is, what are the most popular religions that we should be aware of? How many followers are there around the world? And then Lindsay, I want you to tack on some tidbits about Wicca, because we just did a pretty interesting article on it at WIA, and go. So Lemon, sorry, let's narrow it down. Lemon, if you could you at least speak to Jehovah's Witness versus the Latter-day Saints? Like what kind of numbers are we talking about globally, locally? What have you got for us?
Yeah, so Mormons, they
And you have 9
are
seconds.
right, 9 seconds to go.
No,
Ready? So,
I'm kidding.
so Mormonism, I know, is one of like the fastest growing religions because their missionary program is super robust.
Mhm.
And I mean, they're everywhere. And so I think the last numbers at their last conference, because that's a statistic they share at their general conference twice a year. It's something over like 16 million people globally. Most of them are in Utah. But it's like really surprising. There's a lot in like the Polynesian Islands. They're really
Oh,
good
yes.
about going to, yeah, like Samoa is a huge population.
Samoa is like 99% Mormon.
Mormon.
Yes.
Yeah. And that was part of like the early effort. And then Jehovah's Witnesses, I think there's about 8 million-ish or so.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's grown rapidly, right? You'll see them out there, both the Mormons and the Jehovah's Witnesses with their white shirts ready to come to your door.
Right. Yes. I want to talk about that so much more, but I'm going to jump over to Lindsay.
Well, no,
and we're going to go straight
need-
into Wicca. Forget Eastern religions. We're going straight for Wicca. Go.
Hold on. I think we need to stop for a second, because my question is to you, Lemon. Are LDS and Jehovah's Witnesses the same thing?
No.
No.
They believe super different things.
Yes.
Duh,
And so I
weren't
think
you
a lot
the
of people
expert on
think,
religion?
yeah, I think a lot of people will assume that when the missionaries knock on your door, that they're all going to be offering the same worldview. And that's just not accurate. It's not even accurate to say that they're as prepared, because the LDS people who knock on your door are typically teenagers, and the Jehovah's Witnesses are older people. So I think it's important to just say that in the 90 seconds that we have, that has now gone to 2.5 minutes, that LDS and Jehovah's Witnesses are not equal. Just like, listen to this transfer. Buddhists and Hindus are not the same thing, because I think a lot of times in America and in the Western world, we tend to lump Eastern religions together and assume that those worldviews are identical. While they have similar beliefs, they are not identical, and they would find it offensive if we said, "Oh, you're the same thing." And so I want to make sure that our people know that are listening that they're not the same thing. Hinduism and Buddhism are pretty large religions, but they're pretty unique as well. So Hindus, there's like 1.2 billion practitioners in the world, and Buddhists, there's 535 million, just a small amount. So to put that into context, there are 2.4 billion Christians in the world, and 1.9 billion Muslims in the world. So these are pretty competitive numbers for some of the largest worldviews. And so you are likely to meet Hindus and Buddhists. One of my law professors was Buddhist and is Buddhist. He's still practicing. And so he would go to his office and chant and he would have particular times of doing that. What bridges the gap between the two? I guess simplicity. I'll make it simplicity. They both believe in reincarnation and karma. Those are two things that Hindus and Buddhists have in common. Their way of getting off the karmic wheel is a little different, but ultimately it's doing good deeds. And if you do enough good deeds, eventually you'll get off the karmic wheel. And for Hindus, you achieve moksha. And for Buddhists, you achieve nirvana. So there is Hinduism and Buddhism all wrapped up in a pretty tiny bow, but they're not the same. So don't walk out of this podcast thinking that they're the same. Jehovah's Witnesses and LDS, not the same either. Wicca.
Let's pause on Wicca, Lindsay.
Yeah.
And we're going to do our book giveaway. And I promise we're coming back to that. Okay. So first thing, our gift today is the book, The Popular Handbook of World Religions by Daniel J. McCoy. We're so excited to give away a copy of this book to someone in our audience. So, Lindsay, can you actually give us a little information on this book and why you recommend it?
Okay, so this is my copy. It is well written in. I've read it a few times. Full disclosure, I wrote a chapter in this book on the Jehovah's Witnesses, and I also helped edit this book. So I've read it cover to cover. Cynthia Hampton wrote her testimony. She is a member of WIA, and she is a former Jehovah's Witness, and she shares her testimony in this book as well, how she got out of the Jehovah's Witnesses and why she's a Christian, which I think is such an important testimony, because a lot of people, and you alluded to this earlier, a lot of people who come out of religions like the Jehovah's Witnesses and LDS actually become atheists rather than coming to Christianity. And it's because those worldviews skew the vision of God and who Jesus is and what atonement is so much that they have a hard time coming to grips with reality that grace is enough. And so ultimately they choose to just not follow anything. So I love that her testimony is included in this text. But the other benefit of this book is that every chapter ends with essentially, how do we talk with people from these religions, and how do we engage with people? And so you can pick and choose which religions you read about with whatever religions you encounter. If you live in the Northeast, there might be more Jewish people. So you might be interested in reading about Judaism and how it's different from Christianity, so that you can engage better with Jewish people. And if you're in a big Muslim area, you could learn about Islam and begin to engage with your Muslim neighbors. So I'm really excited that this is the book that you're giving away. I can't wait to see who wins.
Yes. Well, we do have a winner. Speaking of winners, we do have a winner, Angel C, who is watching on our YouTube channel. Angel, if you're there, give us a wave or something. So, and we will reach out to you and make sure we can get that book to you. Now, if you didn't win, we still have something for you. We're launching our second ebook devotional called Love Came Down on November 26th. This is a free 30-day apologetics devotional on the birth and life of Jesus. All you have to do is become an email subscriber, and you'll automatically receive it on launch day. Our moderators will be posting the link so you can subscribe today and get your free copy of Love Came Down on November 26th. So we're so excited for you to use it this Christmas. And you know it's good because I contributed to it. And a bunch of other women that are far more intelligent than me also contributed to it. So it is not only a book about love came down, it is a gift of love from us to you guys. So now we can talk about witches.
Yeah.
So because I'm not moving on until we get that topic, because it's so interesting. And yeah, Lindsay, please.
Yeah,
take it away.
The thing about the reason why we're even talking about it, I think, is because Halloween is a week away, and so Christians tend to think about Wicca more often when Halloween is around the corner, and Wiccans practice year-round. It's not just a Halloween tradition for them, so I think we should note that Wiccans are practicing all the time. Usually their biggest events are around full moons or seasonal changes. And I guess one of the big questions that we get at Mama Bear, and probably at WIA as well, is why is there a resurgence of Wicca? Like when I was growing up, which I just turned 40, in the 90s, there was a movie called The Craft, and I think they just redid it.
Yeah.
I didn't see it. I didn't watch it. That's one of the things I chose not to read. I read like modern witchcraft.
I was going to say, is it research? I don't know.
Yeah, I read history of, magic, witchcraft, and the occult, but I didn't watch The Craft. I did watch the old one, and the way that it was presented, the way that Wicca was presented in the film, is that it was these outcast women, young women, who got together in this secret group and performed magic together. And some of the magic was benign, and then a lot of it was not benign. A lot of it was quite harmful, and some of it was good. I think one girl got like completely like healed or something. But all that to say, it in the 90s, there was a kind of a push toward Wicca as well. And so the question has been why? And you can kind of align it to issues of social justice, feminism in particular, when women are kind of saying, we've had enough of those men. We are women and we are strong and independent and we can do this on our own. We start to see more and more women joining Wicca. And their involvement could be small or it could be big. And I would say, don't assume the worst of somebody, but also be ready to have a good conversation with somebody if they start talking about why they're dabbling. Some people just believe in crystals. And so they'll start to, wear specific crystals that they think will bring them luck or whatever, or they'll claim a goddess. They'll start to say, oh, my goddess is. And, you get the big ones like Aphrodite, or you get the minor ones. There's lots and lots of goddesses to choose from. What do Wiccans believe? Good question. Wicca is one of those religions that worldviews that they kind of pick and choose what it is that they want to believe in. That's one of the draws of Wicca, is that you can pick what you want to participate in. Don't want to join a coven? Don't join a coven. Nobody's going to require you to join a coven. Don't want to participate in that festival, whatever that festival is, fine. You don't have to participate in that festival. And so that is a really big draw, especially in a culture that is all about my truth, your truth, what is the truth. And the draw of Wicca is that my truth exists and everybody else honors that truth, even if it isn't their truth. Or the truth, as I like to say.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I can see the appeal. That's exactly what our culture is after right now. Just a is it TCBY approach to, is it TCBY, the yogurt place?
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
To their beliefs.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I like to call it Oprah-ism too, where Oprah is also back in the, I'm aging
Oprah,
myself.
the Christian.
Well, Oprah at one time did
former Christian
claim to be a Christian, and she might still, but she is one who does not believe that Jesus is the only way. And so she has had people who, particularly in the New Age, on her channel, and I don't even know if I don't have cable. I don't know. But I don't know if her channel still exists, but she used to have people like Eckhart Tolle on her channel who would promote ideals that are similar to Wicca, but are phrased as New Age. And so you'll see things about astrology or tarot cards are pretty popular amongst Wiccans. And the earth, Mother Earth is a big deal. They definitely celebrate taking care of creation, which is something Christians could learn too. I always like to talk about how we can learn from other worldviews and we can take some things from them that are truth. And creation care is one of those things that Wiccans really value. They don't necessarily call it creation care, but taking care of this one planet that we live on, and making sure that we're nurturing it the way that God intended. That's not their language. The way that God intended
Sure.
it to. And I think we could learn that from them, but there's a lot we shouldn't learn from them.
Sure.
No.
Yes. It's important to remember that these other religions outside of Christianity, they're not just riddled with nothing but false ideals and evil things. There is good in all of them, but there is a ton of deception in all of them.
I do want to place a caution on people who want to research the occult or Wicca. That's not one that I necessarily recommend for all the people to do the research. I don't recommend everybody go to their library and check out modern witchcraft. I don't, or how to be a badass witch. I don't think that is one that I know. Hopefully that's not a problem. It's the name of a book, people. I don't recommend you go check those books out unless you are prayed up and ready to engage with the occult, because the spiritual realm is real. And I don't want to deny that. I don't want to, tell you the devil's on your shoulder, but I do want to tell you, like, you need to be careful when you're starting to learn about other worldviews, particularly about the occult, because it can be a dark, dark place.
Absolutely. Just as we wouldn't recommend anyone go attend a seance as part of their research, right?
Right.
Yeah. Don't recommend that.
I have not been to a seance, and I will not go to a seance.
No, that's an example of you're dabbling with the dark, and you really don't need to go anywhere near it.
Right.
A book is enough. So, Lemon, how do we approach people from other religions, and what kind of questions should we be asking them?
I think really asking them to like define what they mean, right? Because that's like a big thing. I know with like being LDS, right? They talk about Jesus, but the way they talk about Jesus is different, right? The definition is different. Or the way to salvation, right? They talk about salvation, but it's different the way you get there, right? It's very works-based and ritual-based. And so I think just asking people to really clarify what they mean makes a big difference, and just getting on the same page with them there. Because, if they have a wrong definition or, of some term or theological stance, then that's a good building block to kind of start from.
So the classic, what do you mean by ...
Yeah, really just asking them to explain where, like what they mean, where it came from, and if they've got, like what sort of evidence do you have that this is what this actually is. I think that makes a big difference. Because chances are they don't. I've learned that very quickly. Chances are they do not have any evidence for whatever word that they've manipulated or like doctrine.
Right. That's a real good one. I do know of numerous people who think, well, we believe the same thing. I mean, I've heard Mormons especially say, yeah, we believe in Jesus. We believe in heaven. We believe in hell. And it's like, but what do you mean by Jesus?
Yeah, that was a big thing, right? Because it's the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And so they're like, well, we're a Christian. We believe in Jesus. And then you dive into who Jesus is, and it's not the same Jesus in any way, shape, or form. I mean, it's the same with Jehovah's Witness, right? Jesus is a different being altogether. And, Mormons believe Jesus was a person just like you and I, who did all the good works and all the temple rituals and was exalted, and so was God. And it's very different views on who they are and what that means.
Right. I mean, even Islam, they believe in Jesus. Yeah. He's in their Quran, and he's a good guy in their Quran. So, yes, important. I'm trying to decide which of these last two questions I'm going to prioritize. So since I can't, I'm going to mush them together. So the question is it okay? Is doubt okay? And how do I deal with it? And how do I start learning about other religions? Do I have to visit a mosque or a temple? So see what you can do with that in the last few minutes before we take the Q&A from the chat. Lindsey, we can start with you if you like.
Yeah, doubt is fine. I think that most people would be lying if they said that they never experienced periods of doubt. And it's about what we're doing when we're experiencing that doubt, but it's also what we're doing when we're not experiencing doubt. One of the beautiful things about studying Christian apologetics is that you are bolstering your faith while you're in a season of faith. Usually, sometimes people do encounter apologetics in seasons of doubt, and that works too, like Lee Strobel or J. Warner Wallace or my husband. But when you're building up your faith in evidence, when your heart tells you things are wrong, you can say, hey, but wait a second. One of the things I love to tell my kids, I have 3 daughters, is, the heart is just, this is the Bible. This is not me. I did not make this up. The heart is deceitful above all things. And what does that mean? I think that we forget that this is true, especially as women, which I know is a gross stereotype, but we tend to be pretty emotional creatures, and it flip of a switch. Okay. And a lot of times you can begin to, it's self-doubt is, am I good enough? And am I a poser? Do I really belong in this field? Am I really good enough to be a mom? Those simple things. But then we start to ask the bigger questions about, the bigger philosophical questions about the existence of God, and what can we do so that when our heart is telling us, you believe kind of crazy things. Well, yeah, but that doesn't make them not true. Mm-hmm. And reminding ourselves, like, okay, there is evidence that Jesus was a real person, and that evidence exists outside of Scripture. So I'm not just using the Bible as my only proof text. There is other historical evidence that Jesus existed. There's evidence that he died. There's evidence that people claim to have seen him after he died. And so recognizing that's the main thing, right? Jesus is the main thing. So if I can fall back on that in times of doubt, then I know, like, okay, my heart's telling me lies. And that's okay. You also need to remember that people should be praying for you when you have times of doubt, or when you're engaging with other worldviews. Asking people to pray for you is a great thing. And it's something I think sometimes we forget about, because, sometimes we don't want to admit that we're experiencing doubt because we feel some sort of shame around that. But I want you to know, if you are watching right now, like I can speak for myself. I have experienced doubt. I have gone through it, and I recognize that doubt is a real thing. And I've come out on the other end knowing that Jesus is still alive, and that he died and he was resurrected on the 3rd day, and that he ascended into heaven, and that he died for me. And there's nothing else I need to do except to accept his grace and to say, okay, Jesus, you died for me. No works in the world are going to get me there. He's already done the work. And so I don't know if that only answered the first question. Lemon, you answered the second question?
Yeah, Phoenix, can you repeat it? Because I was so caught up in what Lindsey said.
It was gripping. It was really good. Well, actually, I'd like to say we kind of touched on this last question about how do I start learning about other religions. Okay. We kind of touched on that earlier, where
my biggest advice there is to engage with your friends who belong to those religions. I think that having a normal conversation with friends who are atheists, that was my first really foray into apologetics. It was a class in seminary where I had to engage with somebody who was not a Christian. And I engaged with a friend who is an atheist. And we talked about what she believes and her questions about Christianity. And I didn't have to have answers. But I learned more about what some atheists believe, right? And what their doubts about Christianity are. So I think if you have friends who belong to other worldviews, invite them over for dinner and have a conversation. And you will learn so much. And you'll also begin to build bridges with your neighbors and your friends, and saying, oh, I'm really interested in what you believe and why.
Yeah. I think that's really good advice, because that was something we did in graduate school too. We had, to go out and engage with 6 different people who didn't weren't Christian and have conversations and write about the experiences and things. And it was really good. I talked to people that I've known my whole life who have radically different views, and I learned way more about what they believe and then how to come back to the conversation, and then approach future conversations. Then it was more like about necessarily sharing the gospel with them in that moment, right? It was really a learning opportunity.
Yes.
That makes so much more sense also, given that you now have a relationship with these people. You're developing a right to speak into and question and challenge some of their perspectives, but also what really is the point in becoming a complete textbook expert on what Jehovah's Witnesses believe when you meet one who says, I actually don't believe all of that. I believe this. It would be like someone becoming a textbook expert on Catholicism, and then they meet, a Presbyterian or something, and they're like, but this is what you believe. And it's like, well, wait, no. We've broken off. There's Protestants, there's denominations, there's this. And it's like, oh, I need a whole new textbook just for this person.
Right.
That's where the relationship comes in. And yeah. Okay. We've got some really good questions that have come through in the chat, if you're ready. The first one, I think, is most likely directed at Lindsey, and it is, are Wiccans different from Satanists?
Oh, yes.
How so, Lindsey?
Yeah, don't tell witches that they're Satanists. That would be not a good way to build bridges. And Satanists wouldn't really like it either. They are wholly different. And it would be really offensive if you told a witch that they worship Satan, because that's sort of the opposite of what they claim to do. They claim to worship goddesses of love and unity and
nature.
things, right? So Satanists have their own worldview. There could be exceptions. There might be witches who are Satanists and Satanists who are witches, but that's not the norm. I don't know. I think there are so many ins and outs of what each worldview has. It would be really hard in 30 seconds to tell you. I did write an article about Wicca, and it's got links about Satanism in it as well. And then I did a podcast with one of our podcast co-hosts, Amy Davison, and she was one day away from becoming a witch. And so we had a conversation about her experiences in dabbling with witchcraft, but also we addressed this topic of Satanism and witches and what their conversation is. I always hate sending people to the things I've written or the things that I've done, but they're really long and
it's okay.
And we spent a whole hour on it. So there's really no time to cover the ins and outs right now.
So the article that you wrote, is that also on Mama Bear Apologetics?
Yes.
Okay. Go there, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, that's great. So leading off on that, I actually want, and this is kind of an interesting one, what would you say is the pro-life stance of the Wiccan religion, and how are they classified?
Depends on the witch. I imagine, so they value life. I think generally they value life, but they're also feminists. So that might lead to the conclusion that perhaps they're pro-choice. And so I would not want to lump all the witches in one category or the other. If you meet a witch, you should ask the witch, because that's, again, they're so varied in the things that they believe, and they are accepted for whatever it is that they believe. And so I don't imagine that you wouldn't find both sides in the world of witchcraft.
Sure. It's interesting. Greg Coco tells a story in his book Tactics about meeting a woman who identified as a witch. And he thought, okay, you value all life. Like, that's what she said she believes. And that was his perfect entry point. Oh, you value all life. You must be pro-life. Oh, well, actually, I'm not. I'm pro-choice. And now
it's that tug and pull of, I value life, but I'm also a feminist. And witchcraft is so rooted in feminism and the power of a woman. Although there are male witches, that's another myth. And don't call them wizards or warlocks. They're witches.
Yeah, they're
Why not?
But they will often, male witches will often support feminism as well.
Because they have to, because they're outnumbered.
Yeah. I mean, I imagine that's part of it. Yes.
I'm just teasing. Okay. What are some helpful steps for someone who has left a cult and wants to speak about it, but needs to heal and deprogram from all of it first?
Oh.
Go, Lennon.
Yeah.
Lemon.
So yeah, been there, done that. And
Mm.
so really it's about finding community. I think that's like the first thing, right? Because when you leave a cult, you leave so many friends and family, and especially if you're like in a big culty community, right? So like if a Mormon were to leave, Mormonism in Utah, that would be insanely difficult for them. And so really just finding a community of people to support you and pray with you and kind of nurture you, I think is really important. And then really figuring out what you actually believe and trying to unravel some of the belief systems that you held, which is hard, right? Deconstruction, I think, is like a really like hot term these days. Like it's a big
Right.
buzzword.
And it sounds terribly painful emotionally and mentally to go through it.
It is super hard, right? I've been through this with, even like my own stuff, right? So I was told like I would have physical babies here on Earth, and after several miscarriages and a hysterectomy, no babies. Obviously, there's no parts to have the babies, and the conversation was like, "Well, you weren't faithful enough, and that's why God didn't give you these babies." And
I'm
so,
sorry.
and it's we're on the other side and we're functional, but it is still like I'm gonna recommend like getting a therapist, like find a therapist to work through some of the issues, because when you leave a cult, like it just becomes so ingrained in every aspect of your being. So even though we've left a long time ago, like I'll still have things come up where I'm like, did I not, is this right? Was I not faithful enough? Is this, because I left? Is this because, and so get a therapist to like work through, get a community, start, really unraveling what you believe, and get professional help. Like there's people who specialize in leaving cults, and I think it's helpful, right? Like it does become your whole identity when you're in a cult.
Right.
And so you've got to figure out who you are without this religion.
Sure.
There are ministries that aim toward helping this as well. I had a friend in seminary who was going through her own journey out of a cult. She was in an offshoot of a pretty major cult, and her dad was a prophet, and he wasn't supposed to die, and he died, and that sent her on this whole process of but this can't be true. And she recently started talking about her experiences and started sharing her experiences and opening up the floor for other survivors to have this conversation. And so there are ministries that are geared toward this, and therapy. Gosh, therapy is such an important thing that I think sometimes Christians don't talk about very often, but your mental health is just as important as your physical health. And there's a lot of damage done in cults to your mental health. And if you're not getting that taken care of, it can just damage your physical health right along with it.
Sure. By any chance, were you thinking of Naomi Wright? I was just
going to... she's a friend of mine. Yay, Naomi.
Okay, because I was just going to recommend her website. So anybody who's interested, she's at naomiwrightministries.com, and that's spelled Naomi WRIGHT ministries.com. And she is committed to spending the rest of her life helping other people coming out of those circumstances, and she's been through it. She's been through it, and
she's so amazing and gentle and just all the things when you watch her podcasts on like everything that has to do with cults and the way that she approaches this topic. And she talks to people, not just me, I've been on her podcast, but experts too. And it's just really helpful. Mary Jo Sharp has been on her podcast, and Doug Rotice, who specializes in the New Age. And so definitely something to look for if you're recovering.
Absolutely. I'm looking through the questions. One, I guess we'll go here because we are in October. What's your take on Christians celebrating Halloween? Should they? Shouldn't they? It comes up every year, ladies, right? What is
That's a
your
nice softball there.
there you go. What's your personal take on involvement as a Christian? Do you lock your kids in the basement and usher up prayers, or do you put on like the most gruesome like zombie costume and go knocking door to door? Where are you at on that spectrum?
Yeah.
Do you want to take it, Lindsey, or do you want me to go first?
I'll let you take it.
The internet's waiting to
want
judge
to.
you, by the way. So
Right,
go ahead. No pressure.
That's exactly what it is. We're waiting. So yeah, Phoenix, it's weird. You knew that I locked my kids in the basement and just,
I knew it. It
shielded
was
them from
something
everything.
about you. I knew it. Yeah.
You
Do you hand out tracts to all the other sinners that come to your door?
We do. We give out prayer cards to every sinner that comes to the door.
I joke, but I'm not exactly dissing it. There is, that's not the worst thing. So yes,
right.
Great.
Yes. No. So my kids go out trick or treating because I think Halloween sort of has like lost the right. It feels like a very like commercial holiday, maybe. And so, they go get candy. They pay their parents the candy tax, which is really great for my husband and I. But there's no like, we don't do any of like the like spooky things, I guess.
You don't have human sacrifices in your basement?
We don't. Guys, we weren't telling everybody about it. It was like, and so yeah. So I mean, they go out, they get their candy. My husband and I take a good solid third of it, which is really wonderful for both of us. But
it's like your tithe kind of thing.
Yeah. We tell them we're teaching them economics when they go trick or treating. We're like, you have to pay tax. We shuttled you to your destination. We paid for the costume, so therefore this is like reimbursement for the government providing the sources to you. But yeah, no, it's not like a
So the thing about Halloween is we're all working out our own salvation, Philippians 2, right? Like we're all working out our own salvation. The same can be said about a lot of different beliefs that Christians hold, well-meaning Christians on both sides. And so I think it's important in this conversation and in this context to enter the conversation with respect and acknowledging that some Christians simply are not going to practice Halloween because of some of its perceived origins. We are releasing a Halloween guide at Mama Bear in the next couple of days, and we talk about some of the Druidic origins of the practices around Halloween. But spoiler alert, it's not just Halloween when these things happen, just like what we talked about with Wicca. Christians just like to have attention toward it on Halloween, but it's happening year round. And human sacrifices are not really a thing. I think Marcia Montenegro, who is from Christians Answers the New Age, kind of puts it the best in saying, like, we need to make sure that the truth is the truth and that we're saying we don't practice it for truthful reasons and reasons that we can show in evidence. And I think a lot of Christians have said, I'm not practicing it because of this. And then those things are not actually true. So my hope is that people will actually investigate what Halloween is all about and then make a decision and then be okay with other people making different decisions as Christians and really commit to working out their own salvation.
Yeah.
That's about the best you can do, right? Everyone's going to feel slightly convicted on different things, particularly when it comes to their level of knowledge and research on different things too. Interesting thing for me is I have no interest in participating at all, but I grew up in New Zealand where Halloween was kind of an American holiday. And as it creeped over, it was more just in a commercial sense. It was
candy.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Whereas you guys were raised in it and, so it's different. It's just showing people grace and letting them, figure it out. Well, so with that, we are getting ready to wrap things up. It's been a great time, Lindsey and Lemon, discussing these important topics and to help us reach out to our loved ones with the gospel. Everybody, if you want to know more about these ladies and find resources on these topics, check out the show notes on YouTube. Lindsey's website is, of course, Mama Bear Apologetics, and Lemon's ministry that helps equip moms with God's truth in simple ways can be found at www.pricelesslyimperfect.com.
Nailed it.
Thank you. You can also go to womeninapologetics.com and select the resources tab to find our recommended reading list on this topic. If you aren't following us on social media yet, be sure to find us on Facebook, Instagram, and of course YouTube. Like you're right there, guys. Just click the subscribe button. It's right there. That is where we shall share all the details of things to come up, post giveaways, and more. Also, join us in November for a conversation with Katie Faust as she discusses the devastating impact of same-sex marriage on children. The date will be posted on our channel and on our social media pages, so keep an eye out for that. Finally, if you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to hit the thumbs up and like this video, share it, and remember to subscribe and hit that notification bell for more future content like this here on our channel. May God bless you, and thanks so much.